want to leave a relationship, but something is holding you in place. You're wondering what could be happening. Let's explore this. First of all, let me point out the fact that every single word and phrase that you used in connection to leaving this relationship points to the fact that you really do want to leave, but something is pulling you back. I feel guilty. I feel wrong. I feel like I'm giving up too early. Or maybe I'm not giving myself enough self worth or self esteem. Hello, my name is Anya. In addition to sorcery, I teach consciousness spirituality. This is my book on how to transform even the most stubborn patterns, or in your case, how to find out a subconscious reason that keeps us tethered to relationships and situations that are not working for us. The book is available on TikTok Shop to show you how to start looking in the direction of that subconscious reason that's keeping you stuck. But first, let me tell you that we don't stay in bad relationships because we don't realize they're bad, or we don't have high enough self-esteem. That could happen, but what I have found that is a lot more prevalent is that we're after something. We're after something that is so precious that we're willing to sacrifice our best years, best energy, best resources in order to get it. And that something is usually an illusion that we buy into that says, if you don't complete this mission and you do not get this thing for me that I'm looking for, something that's going to happen, and it's going to be bad. It's going to be a lot worse than the suffering that you are enduring here. That illusion that you're missing something really important, and if you don't get it, the world is going to collapse, is of course founded in this misconception of self. Okay, so do this with me. I want you to close your eyes and imagine that you are, without any further warning or waiting, before the guilt and the shame and the wrongness can stop you, just plain leave the relationship. There's a door in front of you, you walk through that door and you shut it, and then the door disappears. And all of a sudden you're in an empty space, having said no to this relationship forever. What do you feel? At first, things that you will feel will be like grief, anger, anxiety, these raw emotions. It's important to stay in them and then continue questioning them. For example, what am I grieving? Am I grieving the loss of something for them? For example, if I give up on this relationship, or now that I've given up on this relationship, she will never change. So now that you have no control over this relationship and she will never change, what does it do for you? What is at stake for me now that I have allowed myself to shut the door and stop trying to influence change at this person? What is it that I am cut off from in my life? What is it that I cannot have or I can't feel because I decided to leave? What we're doing, by the way, is a shortened version of identity work that I describe in the middle section of the book. Ask me, what do I think is going on? Well, let me tell you what comes up for people in similar situations. It may or may not be what you're going through, but maybe it'll give you a clue of where to look. Some people, when they imagine shutting the door, not controlling the growth or the change of the person on the other side anymore, they feel like they will never experience love. And when they question it further, they understand that they believe from their childhood that in order for them to experience love, they have to change the person who doesn't want to change, which fits into kind of a formula that they have incorporated into their sense of self a long time ago, when one person in your environment that didn't want to change or refused to change couldn't connect with you or couldn't provide the kind of love that you needed and wanted. And there's always, always, always something on the hook, something that is being held hostage until the change occurs. For example, I cannot experience full happiness. I can never let go of being responsible for others until they change. And so you live in this frozen state, continuing catering to the agenda of that conditioned self. Another thing that comes up is gauging your personal value, like who you are as a person, or how powerful you are, or even how loving or enlightened you are, by how much change your presence can generate in the other. What I see a lot of with identity work is that we assume a false sense of control, making up a story about, how things work, because that in the past was a survival mechanism to stave off or to protect us from a feeling of total powerlessness. That it was never our job to change the other person. It was nothing magical about us or how lovable we were or how great we were that made them change or not change. That the change occurs in each person's because that person sees the necessity to go deeper, to dig deeper, usually at the times when they bump up against an obstacle that they can't solve, or they're in a relationship that is draining or hurting them in the relationship with the person or with the world, and they can't afford to lose the resources anymore. So while we live in the world or in the inner world that is defined and conditioned by this sense of self, it feels like we have to keep trying. We have to keep going for it because there's a prize on the other side, a prize of possible wholeness for everybody, happiness for everybody. But what solves this issue is when we abandon this old battle, abandon trying to slay the old dragon, grieve that one person that did not change, grieve this idea that even though we are powerless to change them inside that dynamic, we're not powerless at all. In fact, what happens when we finally stop playing the game, like if you walked out right now and you understood that you were whole and complete, and so are they, you have the capacity for insight, and so do they. You might give that person the first needed discomfort in order for them to start digging deeper, in order for them to say, okay, either I'm going to step up or I'm going to remain at this level. So, to sum it up, the identity that feels defined by another person's well being, identity that feels on the hook for something if another person changes, identity that wants to stay in control, to control the uncontrollable in order to maintain the kind of world it feels safe or at least familiar with, is the problem. And we need to discover it, give it a name. I like to say, make an I am statement, and then release it. Grieve the loss of that old self that finds its hope and definition through feeling responsible for the other. And then begin living life in integrity with who you are, which means just saying yes to things you want to say yes to and saying no to things you want to say no to. Not being invested in that area in between where you are constantly in the state of hoping, where you just look at reality and say, you know what? I am okay with this reality. And I'm going to tell you something, having been in relationships with, or still being in a relationship with a person that at one point I wanted to change, I can tell you that from this liberated point of view, all of a sudden it was okay that they were changing at their own pace. I don't know how your relationship will unfold, but I'm going to tell you it's going to unfold a lot better if you find that core assumption and release it. So, for those of you who are interested, check out the book on TikTok Shop. And happy Halloween!